Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. My name is Chris Sepper. I run MedCityNews.com, and I'm in the bowels of Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. I'm actually about to take off to go to the American Telemedicine Association conference. I am joined with Stephanie Baum, who covers digital health for MedCity, and Megan Akeshavan, who writes about early stage life science innovation for MedCity News. And we will be joined, barring any more technical difficulties, Nicole Oran, who writes about pop culture and other big picture issues in the world of the business of healthcare. You are watching MedHeads, which is MedCityNews.com's weekly look at the news that's happened on the business of innovation in healthcare. There's so much to talk about this week. We're going to talk about the ATA conference. We're going to talk about what's happening with hacking medicine, Dr. Oz, and a whole host of other topics. Megan, let's start with you. You actually were in Boston at the beginning of the week. You actually took part in the hack, but then there was some interesting news that came out of the hack, and then you went to a conference after that. So I'll let you start us all off.
Yeah, lots of stuff. I've had a pretty awesome week, honestly. So I went to the hacking medicine competition, I guess. It's a hackathon in Boston, and at the tail end of it, the organizers announced that they are creating a hacking medicine institute. They were kind of cagey, not cagey, but they were scant on the details. But basically, the idea is to bring the energy and like idea generation concept of hackathons to actual businesses. So it will teach corporations how to mix up their innovation, strategies using a hacker perspective. So that more info about that will come out in the next couple of months, but it should be a really interesting way for life sciences business, well, anything in healthcare to just jumpstart some more creative thinking. What else, Chris? Hello? Okay. Well, another part of the
So I'm using airport Wi-Fi, which also means that I could disappear at any time. So
okay, well, I will keep talking.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you
Yes.
now, Chris.
Good. So good. So Megan, what I don't think people know, and we're going to write about this in about a week, you're going to do a first-person essay on this, is you took part in the hack as an individual hacker, right? You're not just a journalist. You actually spent a few years studying precision medicine in a psychology lab.
Psychiatry.
Am I wrong?
Psychiatry.
Psychiatry, same thing.
No.
Um, but so you took part in the hack, and so I'd love to get, the purpose of the hacks always seems to me is to instill more innovative thinking in the people who are going to be deciding to do these innovations. Again, you're going to write about your first person experience, but tell everybody, at least from inside a hack, what that was like.
Oh man, it was incredible. I write about startups all the time and early stage innovation, and I never really understood what it meant to be innovative at an early stage. We spent 10 hours just brainstorming a problem, trying to come up with a solution, and it was incredible to be like in a room full of so many smart people just like trying to work towards like a business solution for something that is a very real healthcare problem. I think I gained a lot out of the experience just in helping myself appreciate what every startup does at its genesis. It was very cool. And it'll definitely inform my reporting going forward.
That's great. So Stephanie, I want to move to you.
Mhm.
I think that we're going to create a special channel on MedCity just simply dedicated to whatever Apple spews about Research Kit or Health Kit or, the watch or whatever, a wearable. But there was a lot this week that you wrote about, and so why don't you run that down? I went like what the the things that happened this week. How does it advance like Apple being more integrated into healthcare?
Well, I mean, it certainly f- uh, makes them relevant for seniors. There was an announcement this week that they've collaborated with IBM to provide these with the with a Japan-based Japan Post Group, which is basically the Japanese mail service, uh, providing senior-oriented apps and iPads to kind of amplify what a service that the Japan Post Group already does, which is using mail carriers to check in on seniors to make sure in their families to make sure they're okay, to see if they need anything. But these apps that IBM developed basically makes it it provides kind of alerts and reminders about medication and exercise and diet, and it's interesting because for one thing, I suppose from Apple's perspective, it gives kind of new life, another market for their iPads, which the sales for their iPads have been a little bit have been sagging the last couple of years. But it also kind of makes them relevant in the senior market, which Apple has found a market for its iPads in medical settings like medical schools and in hospitals, and so this is another sort of critical market for Apple to make itself relevant, because seniors, the 65 and older population, is a pretty sizable population worldwide, but in Japan they make up a quarter of the population. So it's an interesting market for Apple to tap into.
Well, so all right, I want to hear from everybody here, and welcome Nicole Oran. Welcome back. I want to ask each of the panelists, kind of on a scale of 1 to 10, where were they in believing Apple would be a big deal in healthcare when they first got rolling with the watch and the research kit a few weeks ago, and where are you now after seeing what's developed in the last several weeks? So Stephanie, we'll start with you, and then Meghana, and then Nicole. Where were you then, and where are you now?
Well, I mean, just it seems like they've, especially, I guess I'm thinking more in terms of the Apple Watch, and they've ramped that up quite a bit. I think Moby Health News reported that they've got 262 apps for the Apple Watch at this point, and a good few of them are for medical purposes. I guess I didn't see.
Love Brian Dolan, love Jonah Comstock.
Right. They do.
Stephanie, we were talking about numbers. I'm going to have to hold you to this now. I know you're verbose.
Okay, sorry.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Right.
You guys, I feel like Alex Trebek here. On a scale,
of 1 to 10. All right, I'd say.
Where were you? Where were you when it launched? Yeah, and where are you now?
Okay, I guess I was probably like a 5, and now probably an 8 as far as what they're doing in healthcare. They've made themselves really relevant.
I always joke with people that you should always listen to the opposite of what I have to say when it comes to technology, because when the iPhone came out, I was like, I got a flip phone. When the internet came out, I was like, I got a phone. So when the Apple Watch came out, I was like, exercise band. But I've been reading about all this stuff, and I would say I'm up to an 8 also. I think there's a lot of really interesting applications that could really feed some more, like, that quantified self-knowledge type stuff. I think that you can get a lot out of it. So I'm excited. But that means it'll probably not do well, because now I'm excited about it. So.
Oran, what do you think?
I think learning about the Apple Watch in particular, I would say it's probably at a 6 or so, and I think now probably still at a 6, maybe a 7. I think there's a lot of room for growth. I think there's pluses and minuses to how things seem to be shaping up so far, and I think that there's a lot of room for growth. And I also think there's a lot of room for things to not work quite as well as people thought they might. Even today, I was reading something about how if you have tattoos, the Apple Watch won't work. So if you're wearing the Apple Watch over your tattoos, it can't get your heart rate accurately. Just different little things where, like, it's going to take a little while, I think, before the kinks get worked out. But I think there's a lot of potential.
The kind of amazing thing, my fiance has a tattoo around his wrist, and he ordered an Apple Watch, and so now apparently it may not work, so I will get the Apple Watch. So.
Well, he has to just. Does he have it on both arms?
No, but it's on his watch hand, so.
Right.
I may
A lot of
get to this out.
a lot of personal revelations there. Number one, Megan Akeshavan engaged. Number two, Megan Akeshavan's fiance baller for having an Apple Watch, right? So there's two big facts. Um, so I was a 2 when it first came out, and now I'm like a 9. Because and actually, it's due to I've been having all these American Telemedicine Association calls. I'm actually moderating. Neil Vercel and I are both moderating a whole bunch of panels. And I think some people inside of healthcare are really eager to kind of poo-poo the Apple Watch, and as in kind of a peripheral that isn't very well integrated into the infrastructure of healthcare. But I'm starting to compare some wearables or Apple with with the BYOD movement, right? I mean, Cleveland Clinic and bigger hospitals like that, they'd only allow BlackBerries to integrate in their system. But more and more patients just simply had to give up and say, all right, well, we'll take any phone because that's what everybody's doing. I think that with the Apple Watch and these kinds of things, people are just going to start using it. So you're going to have to go to them. The consumer demand will be so great. The only thing that I think is going to be an issue for the Apple Watch and some of the business models around this, Lisa Sunan did a great column about this a while back, was a lot of these are all based around the idea that people are going to willingly give their personal health information, their genetic code, for free. And I think that's going to be a very short-lived experience because people are going to realize, I will give my genetic code for free if you are going to heal me of something. Otherwise, I want you to pay me. And even if I'm going to give it to you to heal me, I still want you to pay me, right? So I think that I'm a 2 to a 9, largely because of the belief that people are going to take this thing over. So that's my take. That was a lot of talk, so I think we're going to shift into. I've got a lot of mansplaining to do on this call, right? I just posted something today about healthcare's bias against women, and probably the least in position to talk more about that. But in essence, if you look at the news that we wrote about just this week or the past few weeks, right? The world now realizes, because Salon wrote about it, that nurses are treated horribly by physicians. Of all the things that Obamacare, the compliance around Obamacare, women's health issues are the things that are not being paid by major health insurance companies. And the coup de grace is something we wrote about a little while ago, that when men do get into nursing, nursing's a 90% female profession, they're paid better than men. And I think and it just seems so blatantly obvious to me that healthcare, and maybe this is a part of society, but whatever, is that women are essentially a second tier when it comes to their professional opportunities, and then the way they're going to be treated. And the impact of that, I think, is massive. It's more massive than the Silicon Valley conversations you hear about, oh, okay, I'm going to sue because I got $8 million instead of $50 million at the venture fund, or there aren't enough people on the Twitter board, right? Not providing healthcare to women of all classes, and not providing a dignified work experience in one of the biggest job sectors in the country is massively injurious. That's my mansplaining. But I'd love to hear your take on both the individual news items and then that idea that kind of women are second tier when it comes to healthcare experience.
So, having a little bit of technical difficulty to hear, but I do have an opinion. You hear me? All right. So I think that's true for healthcare, but I also think it's true for research. It's kind of stunning to me how many male diseases tend to get funding over a lot of women's indications. I mean, of course, breast cancer has lots and lots of funding, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, like, oh gosh. I'm sorry. I'm blanking on this. I'm so sorry. Like, male pattern baldness versus female pattern baldness. I don't know. Like, there are plenty of examples that I'm just blanking on right now where research is skewed towards men indications, basically. It's interesting, and I also think that as far as doctors mistreating nurses, that's absolutely true. Like, I hear that all the time, just in passing. So I think it just goes along the line of salary disparity among any profession. I mean, it's rampant no matter where you look. That's what I got.
Yeah.
was really struck by, sorry.
You go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I was really struck by Alexandra Robbins, one of the statistics she cited in the thing that 26% of women, of nurses reported having something thrown at them by doctors. That sounds like a terrible work environment. You know, and I think you know, things are changing as far as just the kind of companies that I'm seeing coming about. I mean, you're seeing a lot more in the way of things like the shift towards nurse practitioners. There are several states now where nurse practitioners can run their own practices. I'm also seeing things like telemedicine, a telemedicine company that focuses on women that took time out, you know, to have children and are kind of on their way back to the workforce, and providing women that are trained as physicians the opportunity to, you know, function as telemedicine physicians. There's a lot more diversity as far as the kind of opportunities that are available in healthcare, but I think we're also kind of slowly but surely moving towards more equity, a more equal environment. I think you're muted. I think your microphone is muted.
Nicole, you're muted.
No, I'm not. Hi. So yeah, I think that there's in some ways progress being made, but I also think just kind of the stuff I've been reading and a little bit writing about lately, it just kind of, I end up catching myself just feeling really kind of discouraged and kind of baffled. Like, what do we do moving forward? Like, why is this still such a prominent conversation and has been for such a long time? Like, when everything is going to change, and what can women in these positions really do besides being vocal and providing awareness? I mean, there's still, I mean, it's a little bit, I don't know, disconcerting to just kind of see the numbers of you know, the wage disparity, but also just how the experience of being a registered nurse, for example, is in a lot of cases not really a pleasant one in terms of being a professional and being a woman. So it's a issue that I wish I had more to say about how we can make changes and how they would really stick, and I don't really know what there is to say about that quite yet. I think there's so much room for change, and I don't know when that will actually really become something that we're not still talking about so much.
I guess my premise when I was writing it, and you know, I remember during Ferguson, you had a sheriff who basically held up a sign that says, "I commit to fight racism in the workplace," and he got all kinds of shit for it, right? But I think about that and how kind of basic and simple that was, and how important it was. So, you know, and feedback. I think you've got to have a male CEO of a major health system basically almost have a similar kind of play and say, look, we have to change sexism. And it should be a cardiologist probably, or a surgeon. It doesn't have to be a cardiologist. Surgeon probably better, because I hear surgeons are the worst. And simply say that like, maybe it's social media, you hold up the sign or you do whatever, and then you put some policies in place, because most of the aggregate isms that happen in our society aren't because somebody says, I hate women, I'm going to pay her, you know, 40 cents on the dollar. They simply make pragmatic decisions that are put into place because structurally it's allowable, right? And so at least that's my theory. So you've got to have a CEO that is a man and say, look, this is garbage. We have to change this culture. So, you know, these policies and procedures are going to change so that we stop this kinds of institutional sexism that's already in the workplace. And maybe a dude does not have to lead us. But that's what I'm struck by. It has to be someone who's going to break the molds, unfortunately. I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to say.
I just if you look at other industries, there are a lot of male-dominated industries. I mean, reporting, for example, is a classic male-dominated industry. But in the 10 companies that I've worked for, I think six of my bosses were 6 of the companies where I worked for, my bosses were women. And in the last few places that I've worked, there have definitely been more or as many women on staff as men.
Yeah, but when you still go to these conferences that I do, I mean, I'm going not in the hospital realm, but I'm going to research. Like JP Morgan is still predominantly suits, The conference, I went to a conference in Boston this week that dealt with neuropsychiatry, and it was mostly men. Like, I think there's a really interesting article, I don't remember who wrote it, a venture capitalist on the JP Morgan conference, and she was saying how women are gaining more executive roles in these biotech companies, but they still send the men to the conferences to be the figurehead or something. So it's a huge culture change that'll have to come. And I mean, there are reports just, on like physician reports on how, I mean, there is the reality that women have to usually bear the brunt of the home life and like have to take care of the kids in addition to wielding a full-time career. So I think that the way salary structures sometimes play out is to take that into account and say, hey, this person might work part-time. There are a lot of things. It's just, I mean, it's very complicated. But there are some realities, like sometimes women do want to take time off, and then that just impacts their overall salary potential. It sucks. It's not.
Sure. Whenever you're out of the workforce, whether it's willingly or because you got laid off or something, it's always a struggle when you get back to be at the salary that you were before or higher.
And I think that just kind of incremental effect these like huge salary gaps basically. And then also, I mean, just as far as the risk.
Okay, so I'm the boss and I'm the guy. I can have the last word. I think in the end, I'm less concerned about executive representation in healthcare when it comes to gender, in part because that needs to change. But most of the people who are rising to executive level now are people who either of a certain financial means or educational means that they can kind of combat. I'm a bit the institutional prejudices against them a little bit better. What really bothered me about the reports this week is that the way that healthcare's attitude toward women's trickles down. It trickles down to people who actually need the equity more because they're looking to healthcare for a good job or to get healthier in a dynamic way. I'm a big William Julius Wilson man, and he's big on believing that in modern America, color, race alone does not inhibit you, class alone does not inhibit you, but that if you do combine those two together, it's a pretty big impenetrable wall. And healthcare can be a great equalizer for that, both in providing jobs for people and for giving them better healthcare so they can become better people. So I think that's more of my concern when I look at healthcare treating people equally, is that Silicon Valley is going to hire well-educated nerds, but healthcare is going to hire someone who's got an LPN, and for them to be crapped on for 30 years is abhorrent. It really is. And I'm always amazed that you haven't seen 50 sons of nurses just come down and start punching people in the face after their mom tells them what kind of day they had. But anyway, so let's close out. We're at about a half an hour. Thanks everybody for sticking with us. And I really want to end with one of my favorite stories of the day. Is the wooish guy of all woo. He is Dr. Oz. And so, Oran, just give us the rundown of this lunatic who any startup with any kind of reputation should try to separate themselves from as quickly as possible.
Well, Dr. Oz has had quite a whirlwind in the past few weeks, I guess. So it seems like now, so after he got dealt with the whole situation with the 10 doctors writing to Columbia asking him to be taken off faculty. That's been addressed. He addressed it on his show and really basically turned it around. They were calling him a quack and that what he was saying was not legitimate, and on his show. And he kind of fired back by pointing out the credibility issues with the doctors who wrote this letter. So Some of them have direct affiliation with the GMO industry, even the tobacco industry. One of the doctors is a convicted felon for Medicaid fraud. So he kind of turned things around basically by really pointing out how you can't take what they said seriously. But there's still a lot of concern about, I think, especially with those directly in the medical industry, about the credibility of what he's saying on the air. Especially pointing to alternative medicine and just different things that he talks about. I think that there's a place and time to talk about different supplemental natural treatments for things, but I think the main issue is that he's really promoting a lot of these things as sometimes magical cures, or it really appears as product placement. And so there was a survey done that we wrote about this week where it was like 81% of the physicians that were surveyed think that he should either have his license revoked or he should resign from his position at Columbia. Just yesterday it was announced that his radio show that was produced by Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Productions has been cut, and he'll be switching over to iHeartRadio. That appears to have nothing to do with the controversy of what just happened. I think that was a deal that was already in place before all this criticism stuff went down. But regardless, it's been kind of a up and down thing for him. So I think he still will have loyal fans in one way or another. I don't think many of them are going to be people who are in the medical field. And we'll see what happens at this point. I mean, as far as his show is concerned, from reports that I've seen so far, Oprah is still standing by him and is still supporting what he's doing. So I don't think his show will be canceled, but I think for a doctor who is very, has been with Columbia for 20 plus years, this is kind of an interesting position for him to be in, I think, to be considered someone who's, has illegitimate perspectives about health when in a lot of ways he really knows what he's talking about in a certain area, but when it comes to diet pills or whatever, I mean, that's kind of a year ago, the diet pills thing, but regardless, I think he's kind of put himself in a situation where I don't think he should necessarily be surprised that he's getting a lot of backlash, but...
Okay, I'm going to go around the horn. We're going to close it out. So, Stephanie, first with you. I'm just going to ask each of you this question, right? Dr. Oz, can he ever rehabilitate his image to the point of having credibility amongst the medical community?
I think if he drops the sort of the natural cures and remedies and focuses on what he's best at with the cardiology, yeah.
Meghana, you have family that are in healthcare that I think are researchers. They're really smart people. Will they ever take Dr. Oz seriously ever as a healthcare professional?
I think he's kind of killed his reputation a little bit. I mean, there's so much, because of, like, for instance, all this anti-vax stuff that's going on. I think that natural medicine and the stuff that's around it has kind of, the pall's been cast on it, so people are being put in one bucket or another, and I think Dr. Oz, I mean, I'm not saying he's an anti-vaxxer at all, but I'm just saying I think he's been put in a bucket of, like, distrust. So, no, I don't know.
Nicole, do you think this is someone who can kind of, not with the public where he can flim-flam anybody on the street, but do you think that this guy can come back and become kind of a credible healthcare professional in your mind to the medical community?
I think he has potential to do that for sure. I think he'd have to switch gears on his approach. I think a lot of it will have to do with rhetoric. I mean, I think that there is value in maybe pointing to some other these things that aren't strictly Western medicine. I don't think that ruins his credibility, but I think when you use terminology, I mean, what was it on his show, whenever he was talking about when he was addressing these critics and they're talking about that drug kappa or whatever it's called, and he says, oh, this turns people into zombies. Like, you can't say stuff like that and be taken seriously. Like, the writing on his show, what he says, how he says it, I think that would be the biggest difference. I don't think it's 100% content. I think it's a lot to do with the hype that comes with daytime TV that makes it where, how can you really 100% take that seriously?
Yeah, and I guess I'm going to have to agree. I think that in the end, the saddest thing about it is that he's probably charismatic enough and knows how to speak to the masses enough that we could see real change. But it just seems like most physicians that try to make connections to a broader audience. He's just flopped. I mean, I know there's startups in there that I think are backed by Dr. Oz or have some kind of Dr. Oz related technology. I'd be ripping that off my site right away. I don't think he's ever. I think he's got to take the scrubs off, and I think it would take years for him to get back to who he is. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this this week's MedHeads up. It's actually a pretty exciting week at MedCity News next week. Neil Vercel and I will be at the American Telemedicine Association conference. Neil got there and flew Virgin Airlines. I am flying Spirit. I think that tells you all about priorities in life. And Megan Kashivan is going to be up in the Twin Cities at the MedTech Investing Conference, which is going to be a fascinating trip, and she's actually going to spend a couple days up in the Twin Cities to meet more of the life science industry there. And there's only going to be more interesting news coming next week, so I hope that you enjoyed this episode of MedHeads. On behalf of Nicole Oran, Megan Akeshavan, and Stephanie Baum, take care. Bye-bye, everybody.